Welcome to The Real Build. I'm your host, Jamila. I have my co-host here with me today, Mr. Andre. Thank you for coming.
Hello. Thanks for having me again.
Oh, we love having you on the show. You and I, we've been working together for
7 years.
7 years.
Yep.
7 years. Condo buildings, fourplexes. We've done the things. And now we want to talk to you guys about what it takes to do the things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go into some process stuff.
Yeah, we've done a lot of shows on kind of infill, and we've done shows on, we've had people in here from the city talking about the processes with the city and zoning, and even last week we talked about the best places to buy in the city and what the next year looks like and our recommendations. So what we want to talk about today is really like the process of budgeting a job.
Yeah.
And I find that that is the biggest hurdle or barrier of entry for a lot of people to do a construction project. And it's kind of where the communication around the budget or the expectations around the budget, once you're into a job, is where things can kind of go a bit sideways.
Yeah, I think the communication breakdown, I feel, is where a lot of people struggle with building new stuff, working with builders, and expectations get misjudged. Maybe some things are overpromised. I feel like that communication piece is where a lot of people have troubles.
And I think that, like, as someone who was going to build or thinking about building either on their own existing property and like redeveloping their land, or say they've bought an empty lot in a subdivision and they want to build a house, or they're thinking of buying a lot and they want to build a house, they go and they talk to a builder and they just want a price. Like, what is it going to cost me to build? And there's a lot of things that happen there. Builders that have been around for a long time, they will tell you, I can't tell you a price. You don't have a plan. Especially
if you're starting from just a lot and doing a demolition, or it's just a bare land lot.
You don't have a concept.
Yeah, it gets so hard to do. I feel like in a subdivision where you have a serviced lot, everything's there, and you kind of pick the house you want to put on from a preferred builder or something. Like, there's been programs like that in the Okanagan.
Yeah.
I feel like that is where it gets a little bit easier, but there's still uncertainties around that as well.
Yeah. And there's one, if you are picking something where there's a plan, there's one thing to have like a marketing plan or a promotional plan, which essentially is a concept, to having a construction drawing that is for that specific property. So there's changes that happen there, and that means there's going to be cost changes up or down that happen there.
Exactly.
And I think the knowledge of the consumer around that is where a lot of the confusion comes from. Yeah.
I 100% agree.
And I know, like, if you're thinking you want to build something, you do need to have a concept of a budget. And so when you're talking to a builder and you have a concept and you're looking at, potential square footage that's available and the concept of what you're thinking of doing, you can get an estimate, like a really big, like, round number to start with. But once you then invest and have plans made, make your selections for your finishes, that's where the real number starts coming out.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people get tied up with, like, well, this is not what you said before, this is not what you said before. That is a guess, really, guys. It's an educated guess to help you invest the money to move forward to get more of a locked-in number.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's important to have, built-in contingencies into the budget, because things do happen. Even the smallest thing of, like, how your window is placed in relation to the trim, or how the trim goes around the window, that can impact drywall and how much drywall work there needs to be done. Like, small stuff that you just wouldn't think about necessarily when you're planning a house or selecting a builder or looking at your dream home. Like, small stuff like that can impact the budget.
Also, a lot of builders will have their own internal kind of cost per square foot price, that they have built something before that hits this price point, and it's probably similar to what you're describing to them. And so that's where the educated guess would come in and using a cost per square foot. But however, that builder might have put laminate countertops throughout, and you're automatically thinking, I would want quartz countertops throughout. And that communication may not have happened in that guessing period, that estimating period.
Yeah.
And then once you get into designing and picking your finishes, now you're picking finishes and there's an increase in price there. And it's like, well, why wasn't that planned for before? Who puts laminate in their house? Well,
Exactly.
lots of people put laminate in their house, right?
Yeah.
So understanding in each category what is creating that initial estimate number is important.
And the process to getting there as well. Like if you're going through like a full development cycle where you're taking a piece of bare land, servicing it, doing upgrades, that has a lot more uncertainties than just walking to a subdivision with a serviced lot and a preferred builder, or you bring your builder.
Yeah, and I think that's a great place to start with this, because you may have built before, you may know people who have built before, especially in the Okanagan, because there's been so much construction in this city in the last 20, 30, 40 years. New communities being built out everywhere in Black Mountain, Wilden, McKinley, Lakestone over in Lake Country.
West Kelowna.
Tons of Talus Ridge, Shannon Lake, Rose Valley. There's tons of new communities in all of our surrounding areas. So there's good chances that you know someone, or you yourself has been through a build before that you would talk to and ask questions about. So traditionally, the building a house on a lot, like you buy a lot, you build a house, right? This is a lot of what you see. Recently, I would say last 5 years, 6 years, what we call infill development has started to happen, which is, building fourplexes or putting carriage homes on your property, or redeveloping your property itself. So there's a really important extra step that you have to do when you are building on your own property that you have, versus when you're buying a lot and you're building a house. And maybe we should dive into that step.
Sure. And I think a lot of that, the difference comes in the planning stage. So when you're just taking a bare piece of land and you're going through the development process, there's an extra permit that you would be responsible for, which is your development permit.
Yeah.
Which is form and character, essentially how your house looks from the outside. The city wants to make sure that it fits the area, fits the neighborhood. It's not anything that's against their current bylaws.
Not Pepto-Bismol pink.
Yeah, exactly. So that development permit stage, that's a set of plans, but those plans, you wouldn't be able to accurately get your budget numbers from that for the actual build.
Well, and the most important part, like forming character is a big one, but it's servicing, right?
And servicing, absolutely.
They need to
that's
know
a huge part.
How many rooms, how many bathrooms are going to be in here, which is how they come up with their calculation of occupying, how many people are occupying it. And then they figure out, how much poo's coming out and how much power's going in, how much water's going in.
Yep.
And how many cars are going to be parked in
exactly.
there. And that is your development permit stage, and you have to submit this application to the city and go through the process of figuring these things out, because you have to create the services to the lot that support what you're adding or building on the property.
Exactly.
And the difference when you are buying a lot in a subdivision and building a house is the developer has already done all this stuff.
Yeah, that bare lot that's there has all of these calculations and has this development permit already on it.
Yeah.
So you're showing up to this with your builder or a preferred builder, and you start from a very clean slate. You don't have to figure out any of these servicing issues.
Right, because they've designed this lot to put a single family home or a duplex, whatever you're buying it for.
Yep.
And it already is serviced to accommodate that.
Exactly.
So you're just working within the lot to now build the house. And so you only enter into what's called a building permit.
Yes.
Right.
Which is the next step after the development permit.
So let's take a break for a second and process that. We're going to dive in more into the development permit process, and then we'll talk about how you can budget from there and how you lead into your building permit. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Real Build. I'm your host, Jamila. I have my lovely co-star Andre on with me today. Hey, Andre.
Hello.
Thanks for coming in.
You're very welcome. Happy to be here.
Yes, he likes it, everyone.
It's a tradition now, every Tuesday.
It is. So before the break, we were talking about a development permit versus a building permit and what the differences are. And just to kind of sum that up is your development permit is when you have a piece of land and essentially you're adding homes to it or you're changing the use it was designed for originally. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing about that is they're going to look at one, form and character. They want to make sure that it will blend in with the neighborhood. You're not building too high. You're staying within the setbacks of the property.
Essentially, going through the bylaws and making sure that you're conforming to what they want to see in that area.
For the zoning.
Yeah.
And that your services, the current services to the property line are sufficient for what you're adding to it. So they want to know how many bathrooms, bedrooms, and from there they can calculate, how much poop's coming out, water's going in, power's going in, cars being parked, and determine if the current servicing can support it or if there is a need to upgrade the servicing and then cost that out and figure that out. The building permit, however, is that the lot is already gone through this process. So if you're going into a new subdivision with a lot, the developer's already done this. They've already serviced it all and have their form and character, their design criteria, which you get. You have to build within your design criteria. And you're just building the house or duplex or whatever it's zoned for on the lot. Because it's already serviced and ready to go.
Yeah. So when you roll up to a lot in a subdivision, you're essentially a step ahead. There's one critical step that has already been taken care of for you.
Yeah. And that's why that lot has a cost attached to it, right?
Yeah.
So it's all wrapped into that lot cost, and you can go ahead with your building permit. So now it's like, okay, still, let's get down to like pricing.
Sure.
And so after any initial conversation, maybe you've even looked at drawings of other houses and got the price of that. That house may or may not be able to be even built the same way that you looked at on your new lot for many different reasons.
Yeah.
The lot itself has grade changes that you have to make changes to the building structure for. Building code changes, they happen every year. So there'll be updates that have to be done to the plan that reflect current building code. And energy efficiency is a really big one. If you're looking at any plans that are 5 to 10 years old, they would not accommodate step code. So there would be changes that need to be made to the plans to accommodate those codes. And so that's where, again, if you're looking at a plan that's been built with a price and you're basing your knowledge to move forward on that, and that's good. That's really the only way you can. But until you invest in designing plans for the property you're building on, and in the time of year, like the year that you're going to, the current year you're going to build in, can you not get something that's priced out and made your selections, your finishing selections, your doorknobs, your stucco, like everything? Can you really get true budget? And even when you get all of that there's still items in that budget that are variable based on when you actually order the product or do the thing. So,
of course, yeah. I feel like there's two kind of budgets that you can create, and that this is the budgets that I've used on our projects. There's the budget that you can create based on your conceptual drawings or your DP drawings. And that budget is more so of an allowance. So you kind of go through each budget item and you look at past projects, you look at other projects, and you kind of put this guesstimate in for, okay, I think my flooring is going to cost X amount of dollars. And again, those are just estimates. And so you can do this with conceptual drawings, you can do this with DP drawings, but you're not going to get precise numbers doing that. If you invest a little bit more money, which I think is the right thing to do, and you get building permit plans,
construction ready drawings,
that's when you're going to really be able to narrow the range on those estimates and have a more concrete answer of what those plans are. So when builders say, well, I don't really know how much that's going to cost, we have to do plans, that's essentially what they're saying. They say, okay, I have a rough estimate of what this could cost, but for your specific home, for your specific carriage home, whatever it is that you're building, it's really hard to come up with a definitive answer that they're then going to be held accountable to when you don't really fully understand, like, how big is your island going to be, right?
Yeah. Do you want a bidet in the bathroom?
Exactly.
Stair lights.
Yeah. All of these small nitty-gritty things that
hot tub on your roof
can change budgets dramatically. Yeah. I mean, hot tub on the roof, you have to start
structurally
supporting that.
Yeah.
Right? So there's changes and there's nuances that happen between the DP and the BP, which help you as a customer get a better understanding of your budget and your pricing, but also give the builder a direction to go and to follow.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the big thing is to understand when you get into this process is that there's steps along the way that get you closer and closer to a number that you can count on. But you need to invest a bit of money to get there. And understanding that, I find a lot of, I have built over 50 projects, I think now, from single family homes that are starter homes, carriage homes, to large, acreage properties off grid, to condo buildings. And the estimate at the beginning tends to be what people really hang on to.
Yeah.
And then there's tension as you go if the prices are changing or something's happening, like, but you told me this.
Yeah.
But you told me this price. And so I think and I know, like, everyone else, there's the industry we have here in the Okanagan. Wow, we have some amazing builders in this market. Edgecombe builders. We've had Dave on from Align West, Gibson Homes, Darcy, unbelievable. I'm actually up against him in some awards, the awards show coming up. We'll see how that works out. But the list goes on of pretty incredible builders in this marketplace, and this is a consistent thing across our industry. The struggle of helping people understand what it could cost and then getting them to the place where we have actual costs.
Yeah.
And the wanting to help them, but making sure they understand, like, something could change. And then when those changes happen, that causing tension or problems in the job.
Yeah.
So yeah, as a consumer, understanding that, and estimates versus having
budgets.
Drawings done for your build and your budgets is really important.
I think I'm kind of on the, like, as an investor coming from a little bit of the other side, I've gotten a lot more in tune with the construction phase of things. But coming from the other side, one big thing I learned is, like, you can't those estimates and those allowances, you can't really just solely rely on those. Having contingencies in your budgets from an investment side of things is really important because those numbers do change based on what you're trying to put in there.
Well, and even when you go to the bank to do a construction mortgage or a construction loan, whether your builder has put it in or not, they want a 10% contingency on there.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's not necessarily a wise thing to, like, if you were to take a BP plan to a builder and they're able to give you a dollar amount, hey, this is going to cost this much, I would be very wary of those kinds of estimates. Unless you're giving them site-specific plans, definitely proceed with caution because it's so hard to estimate things based off conceptual drawings.
Yeah. So, okay, now that's conceptual drawings versus having construction drawings and the difference in how that gets priced. We're going to dive into what it takes to budget out construction drawings and what you can rely on in that budget and where there could still be some variables. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Real Build. I'm Jameela, your host, and I've got my co-host here, Andre. Thanks for coming.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Today,
great to be here.
Yeah, today we are talking about budgets, budgeting a construction job, and why it can seem complicated, why there's changes throughout the different processes, and we can't stress enough on why until you have construction drawings planned and designed site specific to your build, that is the closest you're going to get to an accurate budget to move forward with your project. And everything before that are estimates to help you feel comfortable investing the money to make construction drawings.
Exactly right.
Does that sum it up?
That sums it right up.
All right. So you have your construction drawings, and you've been talking to a builder with getting some advice on how to get to these construction drawings. Maybe you don't have a builder involved that you've engaged with yet, which is not what I recommend.
I agree.
But it is what most people do because they feel like they're going to be able to shop this plan around and get the best deal.
Yep. Which, I mean, that's an argument to be made. But on the flip side, if you work with your builder throughout the design process, they might be able to steer you in directions. For example, I see you want to do this on the exterior. If we do it in this material instead of the one the architect is suggesting, it could come out cheaper for you and look the same.
Yes. Or I see you want to span this room this big. If you reduce it by a foot, it will reduce structural engineering costs.
Exactly.
There's lots of tips that the builder's mind and experience can add immense value, especially now with energy efficiency codes.
Very true.
In your design process that will help you still have a beautiful home, but be closer to a targeted budget.
Yeah. And architects themselves do this as well. But my philosophy is the more eyes on it, the better. And also working with the same builder over and over again, you get that rapport and you get that trust. So, yeah, I don't see a negative to working with your builder.
Yeah. And I mean, architects and draftsmen, they're great. They're a lot of them are really visionary and
definitely
they want to create a beautiful project for you. They're getting paid and they're not losing anything if you don't build this plan.
Yeah, that's true.
And so the builder is trying to earn that work with you by helping you with tips of construction costs and techniques in the design process to make sure this is a job that does get built, because that's when they get paid.
And with the least amount of surprises. Like if your builder sees something on your plans, which if something is rearranged or reconfigured, it could save you some money, then, that seems like a win-win to me.
Yeah. So, okay, first scenario, you've designed your plans, you have build-ready construction drawings, you're going out and you're talking to 2 or 3 different builders and you want to get a price. So I just finished budgeting out a really cool fourplex infill job, and I brought the budget with me here today, and it inspired us to talk about this topic today. But there's 66, give or take,
Yep.
categories, businesses, suppliers, and tradespeople that I've sent these plans out to and got estimates for in order to get a full, complete budget for this project. 66
Yeah.
vendors. Let's put that into perspective. You are throwing a dinner party and you went to 66 different grocery stores and decoration stores and dollar stores to create the budget, to price everything out and create the budget for the dinner party. So it's an extensive amount of work. And then when the plans arrive at these 66 businesses to give their quotes,
Yep.
you know, it takes a week, 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks for them to review the plans in detail, go through all of the design techniques, make sure they haven't missed anything, and provide their quote for the project. They might have to review it with some of their other colleagues. There's a lot of work that gets involved into creating a budget.
Yeah.
And so if you're shopping 3 different builders and these people don't know if they're going to get the job or not, one, it could be hard to, they could not even send it out for quotes, right? They could just put their own
that's
estimates.
the worst case scenario.
Yeah. And that's I would say the most common. Like, again, 66 suppliers, send those out. You've got them all jumping through hoops. You work with these people on a regular basis, right?
Yeah.
At some point, you don't want to waste their time either.
Definitely.
And so you do an educated estimate, and essentially you're back at where you started with your concept drawing.
That's right. Yeah.
Or they do send it out to get quotes on the project for you. And sometimes those are the ones that come in a bit higher than the ones that are estimated.
Very true.
And then you end up with cost overruns.
Yep.
The reality is, I mean, in the Okanagan, there's only so many suppliers out there we're all working with. So
That is true.
another reason why I encourage you to just start working with your builder off the top. So now, say you are working with your builder off the top. They're involved in the design process.
Mm-hmm.
They have these construction drawings. They actually tender the job out. So that's a phrase you can keep in your back pocket when you're out there shopping, is ask if the job has been tendered out to suppliers with quotes. And these quotes are coming in, and now you're getting a much more accurate budget. But they've got a cabinet quote, but you haven't gone to cabinets
Yes.
and
that's
picked
true.
anything.
Then it's definitely just an allowance.
They've got a flooring quote, but you haven't gone to the flooring company and picked anything out. There's plumbing fixtures, there's door profiles, there's door handles, paint colors even, like maybe you have had in your head that you want to have 3 feature paint walls. But if I was just budgeting this without knowing the interior design specs, I would budget a trim color and a wall color. If you added another wall color, there would be an extra cost down the road for doing that, right? So this is where the details need to come out. And so sometimes, a lot of times actually, that's not done at this stage for budgeting, or for because one, it's time going to all these suppliers. So again, another reason, if you've actually engaged this builder and you're committed to working with this builder, much more likely to go to all the suppliers.
To get the time investment and actually go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, you might need an interior designer
Yes.
to help you make these selections. And that's an investment of money, right? You've got to hire this person to come out and make all these selections for
And
you.
that's even another set of plans, honestly.
Yeah, it
with
can
the
be.
interior design, yeah.
Right. So you got to weigh out those things and decide what you're comfortable with in creating this budget to move forward.
Yeah.
But you got to understand those things, because if you haven't picked out your kitchen and there is an estimate in the budget line, and then you sign the contract, you're submitting for your building permit drawings, you have the permit, the shovel's in the ground, you're finalizing your cabinet selections with the cabinet company. It's the first time you've been in the cabinet company.
Yes.
Which can be overwhelming on its own.
There's a lot of selections there.
Picking out your kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a budget to work with, but maybe you decided you want a hardwood or custom paint color.
Yeah.
And now it's over budget or more than what was assumed.
An easy way to think of it is everything that can be customized and is in a way aesthetic. I mean, the same thing can be applied to mechanical systems and actual plumbing in your walls, but
yeah,
the key thing that usually changes is aesthetic stuff. The countertop materials, your cabinet materials, whether your doors are soft close or not, all of those things you should definitely try to capture and go to these places and make your selections during the budgeting process so that there's no price fluctuations or little price fluctuations during the build.
Or if there is, it because you
Exactly.
picked the first kitchen
Yeah.
and you're making it something else. And then you can understand the controls behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, budgeting. Is everyone still awake out there? I'm sure they are. We are going to come and talk more about this next. Welcome back to The Real Build. I'm Jamila, your host. I've got my co-star, co-host with the most, Mr. Andre.
Hello.
I threw him off there. We have been talking about budgeting today. I just recently completed budgeting a big fourplex infill project, and it sparked the topic today. And the process of getting a price and the confusion that may happen in the process of getting a price. But essentially, if you've taken the path we've recommended, you got your builder involved in the design process, you have your full construction drawings that are designed for the property you are building on, and it is going out for tender. You have visited the cabinet company, you've picked your cabinets and your countertops and your handles and flooring and all the things to get as close to an accurate budget and price as possible. Still, there will be some variables.
Only a few items.
However, I think one of the biggest ones is excavation.
Yes. And to preface, this only relates to a site like a greenfield site or a site where you're demolishing and building something bigger than there was before.
Yeah, an infill project, really.
Yeah, an infill project. This doesn't really apply to a subdivision where you walk onto a lot that is already serviced and ready to go.
Well, I mean...
Less so.
Less so, yeah.
Less so.
If you are on a building site that's ready to go, the biggest variable is how much earth you have to truck in to fill around the house that you're building. And the reason why there's a variable is because one, you don't know where the material is going to be available.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that is the distance the truck has to go back and forth to get that material. Maybe you get lucky and the neighbor is pulling out material they don't need and you can just dump it right onto your site. That's ideal. Other times you could have, trucks going 10, 20 kilometers away to get material from somewhere else and bring it in. So that is the variable there.
But let's talk about the infill. Why is excavation, that first step, breaking ground, why is that the most variable heavy portion?
So one thing is that unless you've dug some geotech holes in your development permit period, and typically I wouldn't invest in that unless it's a larger project, like over a 4-door infill project if you're doing a condo building or something like that. But you are on old ground, really. Some of the things that are very prevalent in Kelowna and the Okanagan is a lot of our land is old orchards.
Yeah.
And so some of this dirt is topsoil, and you need good solid ground to build on.
Yeah,
And
there's materials that you can't really build on, or you can't build anything of scale or size on. And so the depth that these quote unquote bad materials go down to, that will be your cost. And sometimes even if you do geotech holes and you do test pits,
you miss it.
And sometimes, like that seam of the good material, it dips in a corner. So in that corner, you have to excavate more than you were expecting to.
Yeah. And sometimes you can hit just a gigantic boulder
Yes.
that creates a big void or hole in the ground that has to be filled back up, or you have to accommodate it with your footings or something. But essentially, you need those footings to be on good, solid ground that geotech signs off on. And the reason for that is that if you have material in the earth that can break down or shrink or grow, like change shape or wash away, then you're creating
decay,
these little holes in the ground that the other material that doesn't do that will settle into. And then that's when the house will settle, and then you get cracks in the foundation and so on. And so that's why the ground is so important. But until you put a shovel into it, you don't really know what you're going to run into.
No.
Another thing is the water table. The water table in the flat downtown close to the lake area is quite high, meaning it's not that far down from you. So again, I mean, you can work with it. There's all these ways to work with it, but you don't budget for that in advance.
Yeah, on a typical house development, that's not something that you would be looking at.
And for example, if you're going to dig a hole and you got groundwater coming in and you need to put a form and concrete in there that has to set, you need a pump that's going to be sucking that groundwater out, and that pump is not budgeted for, and the labor and the time. And so that the excavation is something that is and can have a variable when you get into it.
Yep.
From that, there's materials in the build that your build can go over a year. So depending on your pricing and your design process to when you start construction and then you're actually buying the materials, there could be 6 months to a year of time that lapses from that. So every year there's price increases of materials.
Yep.
And if you've signed a contract with the builder and it's a go-ahead build, they can kind of mitigate some of that by locking in POs with their suppliers and knowing that this material is going to get used, and they can buy it up sooner than later. The other thing is that there's materials that have almost like a stock price. It's like a daily roaming price.
Yep.
Lumber's one of those.
Yeah.
Concrete's another one. So until you actually purchase it and have it delivered, there could be some variable in that price. Normally, it's not that crazy.
No, usually it's insignificant. On a stable market, it's, you have a couple percentage point of movement, but it's not huge.
Yeah. However, we did just go through an experience.
Yeah. 2020, 2021, 2022, there was huge fluctuations day to day that were occurring.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was like on construction sites, it was like watching the stock market fly and then waiting for a small crash, and you buy as much wood as possible.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that with concrete. You're kind of stuck with the day you need it. But and again, we haven't really seen that happen. We've had some regulation in that, but it is something to be aware of. That, and steel is another one, rebar that can change. So these are variables that are, outside of your design control, outside of your builder's control, and happens kind of as the build is going, that you do want to understand.
Yeah. I think the most important thing even to take away from this show is having constant communication and good communication with your builder is going to save you a lot of these surprises and headaches.
Yeah.
Because having a builder that you trust and that can explain why things are moving the way they're moving at least gives you that peace of mind that, you know, it's not somebody that's trying to rip you off or that they don't know what they're doing, but it's things that happen outside of anybody's control.
Tariffs,
shortages, you know, land that doesn't do what you want it to do or what you were expecting it to do.
Great example was one of our first projects we did together. I was terrified about your excavation because we did the house next door.
Yeah, the house next door had, 10 feet of material that couldn't be built on, and then somehow mine was only 2 feet. Like, it's crazy the differences
the orchard ended at your property line. So there's surprises you can run into. So with good communication, listen to your builder. And again, this is all, they might be explaining stuff to you and you may not be comprehending it until you get into the moment where it's happening. So just be patient and listen to your builder and trust them. If you've selected them, you're in it, you got to trust them through the build. We wanted to talk about fixed price and cost plus contracts and the difference in those contracts, but I think we could talk a whole show about contracts because we just talked a whole show about budgeting. We don't have any more time. So maybe that'll be our topic next time. Come back. We're going to talk about contracts, construction contracts. We'll get into liens, all the stuff.
Financing, maybe.
Financing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. Andre, thanks for coming.
Happy to be here.
And if you have any questions, Gurinder, where are they going to text us?
Send a text to 250-862-2525.
Standard rates do apply.